What's going on, guys, and welcome on in. I know I haven't been able to talk with you guys in a minute, but today let's revisit an old series I used to do called the Most Needed Buffs. So we're going to talk about the 5 fire non-limited units that I think that me and my stream, I went live today and we created a list of the top 5 units that either we want to see or we think need buffs the most. Number 1 being the most needed, number 5 being the least needed, but the 5 most needed buffs for fire units that we would like to see. Smilegate's been on point, you know, delivering the regularly scheduled buff patches. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe you'll end up agreeing with me in my stream, or you change the thing around or two. But I always see in the comments, right, guys? Man, they included X unit, but they didn't, you know, why are they buffing X unit but not including Y unit? So this is your opportunity. Let me hear from you guys what you would like to see in these buff patches. And today we'll focus on the fire units. We can get to the others in future videos. All right. So let me know if you like the content. And yeah, without further ado, let's begin our number 5 or our top 5 most needed fire buffs. All right, guys, before we begin the actual ratings 1 through 5, let me make a very fast disclaimer. If I include a unit on this list that you don't think deserves to be up there, or if I miss a unit that you think should be up there, please do not get offended. In the past, I've had a lot of comments that people get very mad. I understand you're attached to a lot of these units, but this is just an exercise for fun. It's just what I want to see you guys, what you guys think currently needs buffs, things like that. But it's really just a fun exercise. Sometimes I can deliver feedback like this, depending on how many of y'all answer to Smilegate, but overall, I have no other part. I have no other decision or weight in decision making. It's just a fun video, all right? So let's go ahead and start with number 1 on the list. The number 1 most needed fire buffs, and honestly, I think this lady needs probably one of the most needed buffs in general, not just fire. It is Fire Araminta. So she is a burn unit, and there are other burn units that were recently introduced that are just way over the top. But even before those said characters, which we'll mention here in a little bit when we get to the PvP part, she's never really been amazing. She's had multiple rounds of buffs, but she really struggles to find an identity, which is such a shame because, like I said, I think I and a lot of other people really like her, the background, her style. Her animations are amazing, her artwork looks great, but she just is outshined. And that's kind of the trend for all these units. They either have units that just do their job but much better, or they just struggle to find a spot that's impactful, like worth building. And so I think despite her numerous rounds of buffs, Fire Araminta still needs some love because in general, she just is not in a great spot. For PvE, units like Fire Tenebri and Fireball and Sezin would be good examples of PvE typical units that excel because of, you know, they excel in areas like Expedition or Abyss respectively. And the buffs or utility they bring, the debuffs, excuse me, and the utility they bring are much, much stronger than like Fire Araminta's Unhealable. So Fire Araminta brings Unhealable and increased attack for the team on skill 2. Skill 3 just does burns, a low chance to stun, I think 50%, and then burns again on skill 1 with some ignore effect resist. So overall, just it's a cool kit that kind of works, but just there's better units to bring for almost every situation you can think of. So overall, I think she does need a lot of love. For PvP, I kind of hinted this earlier, but her ML counterpart, Silverblade Araminta, who also is not in the best spot, but if we did want to bring someone who does stuns and burns, she's much, much more reliable, as well as being light type, so she doesn't have to worry about ice units and missing on them. And then, of course, we have the newly introduced Fire Carrot, who is just Araminta, but much, 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 much better for a lot of things. Yeah, so overall, I do think she would be number 1 on my list. And let's go ahead and move on to number 2. Most needed fire buffs. Okay, so number 2, guys, maybe this might surprise some people, maybe not, is Fire Ken. Fire Ken, I mean, he's had some significant changes way back when, because at the start of the game he was very weak, and then after his initial rework, this was 2 years ago or so, he was seeing a lot of play because he did have a very nice bruiser kit. If you just look at the amount of stuff he can do, it's actually very nice on paper, right? Burns out the booty, lots of defense breaks on multiple skills. He also has the vigor mechanic, which increases attack and defense, cannot be dispelled, and also provides additional abilities like ignoring effect resist when it's in play. And then skill 3 has a stun, a crazy amount of multiplier, and you know, also decreases attack. Why doesn't he work? Well, similar to Fire Araminta, he's kind of overshadowed by, I'll give y'all a second, what fire unit that also, you know, is tanky, a bruiser, but can close out matches better? Who do we think that is? In my opinion, I think that unit is Fire Ravi. Ravi, similar bruiser. Maybe she doesn't bring the defense breaks. However, Fire Ravi has the insane amount of damage and that closing potential on her skill 3, the AoE, high chance to stun, crazy damage, especially when paired with counter set. Just the fact that she does AoE and can hit those pesky, you know, stealth and other hard to reach units makes Ravi a much better closer than Ken, in my opinion. If there was a meta that shifted where, you know, we're back to very tanky play and we didn't mind all single target damage, he would be an absolute beast. But unfortunately right now, in the state of the game, with the amount of damage that comes out, as well as the defensive units, so think of units on Guiding Light, like Landy, or units with built-in stealth like Spectre Tenebria, he just has no ways to reach them, and it just hasn't had a spot for a very long time, guys, which is a shame because his kit is so fun. It has so much built into it. This might be one where maybe if the meta shifts he would come back, but otherwise I do think he needs a little bit of love. So Fire Ravi I think would be the main kind of overshadowing unit. And then number 2, also recently added, would be ML Kawazu, who does insane amounts of single target damage. So he also suffers from that in that regard where he cannot target, you know, hard to reach units. However, ML Kawazu brings something to the table that Ken doesn't, and that would be his anti-AoE, anti-area of effect utility. So I think Kawazu is kind of what Ken should have been, or maybe should have changed to be, and now Ken kind of needs to find a spot, and if this is the way the meta is going to continue. So Ken, overall number 2 on the list. Most needed buffs, we almost never see him anywhere, and I know there are Ken fans out there, let me know. But yeah, for now he will be number 2 most needed in my opinion. All right, okay guys, let's go ahead and move on to number 3 most needed fire buffs. Okay guys, number 3 on the list is, without further ado, Fire Litika. Now Fire Litika has received a lot of buffs, at least one major round of buffs in the past, just like a lot of these other units on the list, but still struggles to find a spot. You always hear me and probably a lot of other people, guys, say, you know, skip Fire Litika, don't really need her anywhere, and it still holds true, unfortunately. Now, after her buffs, she does decrease buff duration, so things like immunity that used to make her kit much harder, or much, you know, much more useless. She can now effectively remove immunity, and 100% combat readiness pushback is very strong, as well as decreased speed, and she gives herself protection on the skill nullifier. However, beyond that, she has like some debuffs here, which decreased hit chance is nice, as well as unbuffable. But overall, the rest of her kit just doesn't bring enough to the table for things like PvP. If we're going to go fast and we're going to try to shut down our opponent, there's better control units, there's better damage units if we're going fast with cleaving. And then for PvE, a lot of other units that are just middle of the pack. Remember, not every unit has to be a PvP all-star. That would breed too much power creep. However, she just doesn't have a spot anywhere. For PvE, the best thing I can think of, let me know guys if you're running a Litika and you like her, or have a spot for her. Best thing I can think of really is either early game players that just have nothing else, maybe pulled her randomly, or content like Dark Corvus Abyss Floor 85, where the massive amount of decreased speed or combat readiness pushback, and I guess decreased speed too, can kind of help lock down bosses like that aren't immune to pushback, or that kind of have that mechanic. But overall, she just not really worth bringing in any specific regard. So yeah, she also might be one that needs more than just you know, slight buffs here and there. Okay, so that's Litika on number 3. Okay guys, number 4, I think some people might be happy to see it, some people might be thinking he doesn't deserve to be up here, but let's go ahead and talk about number 4 on the list, and that is Haste, who was after Luna, or along with Luna, before what, a few months ago, guys. It hasn't been too long since his last round of buffs was the most wanted. You would always see it in every comment section, every Reddit or Stove post. Buff Haste. When are we buffing Haste? Well, he finally got a round of buffs, guys, but unfortunately, as a lot of y'all know, or maybe you don't if you're brand new, a lot of people were not happy with the buffs he did receive. They were a lot, they were significant. However, they were specifically for fighting Earth units, as well as it really seemed they wanted to make him just good versus Golem or just PvE content in general, right? So the changes make him very, if you have a unit, unless we're talking about like some niche arena or guild war scenarios, if you have units that are only good, that want to excel like versus a certain type, so for Haste we want to fight Earth heroes or enemies, he's just not really great for PvP overall, especially for things like RTA. Like I said, the buffs were significant. I do think if future content comes out, like the Advent coming this week, guys, I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, but Advent, like, think of it as single player expedition. This might make Haste much more viable in that regard, and he at least has a spot now. It's just the spot he's great in, Hunts, is just not. Golem, at least, it's such a joke. It's just, I know why people still want to have this guy buffed, and I do think overall. With all the other fire units I think are in decent spots, he probably does need something kind of either changed up. Maybe just if the content is, maybe if the PV content is good enough, he'll be okay. But overall, if we did want him somewhere else besides Golem, I don't think this is it. So such a unique style, the vampire thing, as well as the bleeds and the detonates. The fact that they made it just all versus earth elements is very, very underwhelming. But let's sit and wait. Let's wait and see, guys, with the future PV content. Maybe he'll be worth building up because some of that will be difficult and we want to hit those high scores. So we'll sit tight on haste. Maybe that a future plan. But for now, very, very underwhelming. I do think should be number 4. Let me know if you disagree on the list. So we got one more, guys. Let's move on to number 5. Okay, guys, number 5. But last but not least, we have, this one actually might surprise y'all. Have I been saying that too much? This one might surprise y'all. Number 5 on the list, I think, is Melissa. Now, I actually didn't want to bring this one up. It was actually my stream's idea, and overall, after talking with them, I think I agree. I don't think there's any other unit in that 5th spot. Maybe there's a few in contention, but I do think maybe at the end of the day, Melissa is a fine spot here for the number 5 most needed fire buffs. And let's talk about why. No one get mad, because I know a lot of people love her. But overall, let's talk about her kit, right? I think plus the lore, plus her design, I think her kit is so dang cool. It synergizes well with her overall game plan, her identity, but she is very, very hard to use for multiple reasons. Number 1, well, let's go and talk about her kit real fast. She does curses. She gives extra turns. Her Soulburn can ignore effect resist. She has immortality, which is cool with the, you know, the cursing. The immortality is very nice with her her vampire theme, and then her skill 1, just the coffin, the whole thing. It all looks really good together, right, guys? And I know she's a fan favorite. A lot of people wanted to pull for her on her most recent banner, but overall, she still isn't seeing play. She is a mostly PvP unit, right, guys? Let me know if anyone's using her in PvE. I think she is. Her area where she shines at least a little bit is PvP. A lot of people like to bring her versus units like Remnant Violet, right? She can strip, she can one-shot the unit as well as curse and hurt the rest of the team. So she's very good in that regard. And then she also provides immortality, which you can kind of just keep cycling because this skill cycles onto herself. So if when she gets running, she's an absolute monster, no pun intended. But it is hard to get her running for multiple reasons. Number 1 is, I think, is just gearing. For a lot of average players, let's say new to mid-game players, it is very hard to make her kit work. You need enough speed and you need enough damage to get that, you know, sort of ramping and setup underway. If you meet or miss one of the criteria, she sort of just completely misfires and, you know, doesn't really do her job. On top of that, I think the Soulburn ignore effectors is very nice, but the fact is, we really want to run things like Symbol of Unity on her, right? Because if we look at a unit like Remnant Violet, or let's say any dodge unit, like a Degen Arby, they're going to be equipped with an item like Moonlight Dreamblade, where if we completely miss on that, because she's very if she's not one-shotting, if she has some RNG built into her kit, that's why a lot of times she's just underwhelming. We need to run both, you know, either Oath Key or Symbol of Unity, and then someone else has to bring the book, because on top of that, if she doesn't dispel, let's say, for example, like an immunity or the evasion buff, that's a very, very bad for her you know, skill 3 and a skill 2, for example. Yeah. So while I do think the last round of buffs, also she did receive a round of buffs, make her much nicer. And I think the people that like using her right now for areas like Arena and Guild Wars, I've seen them pop off. I have guildmates that really, really love her. I do think that, you know, in the future, if they did want to make her a little bit more meta, not necessarily, these round of buffs don't need to make anyone top tier. We don't want a lot of carrots running around, right, guys? But I do think for such a cool character, they could make it a little bit easier to get her going, especially for the new to mid-game players overall. So definitely number 5 for a reason. Very, very strong in the right hands, but a lot of times RNG or difficulty in getting her running, needs a lot of support or gearing, just makes her a little bit too hard to run at the moment for a vast majority of players. Anyways, guys, I think that'll wrap up the number 5, all 5 of the fire units. Next up, either Ice or Earth. Let me know which ones you want to see next, or if you just like the style of content in general. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to leave any other, what do you call it? If you thought some of the numbers should be moved around in terms of the buffs, or if you think like there was units I didn't even mention that should be on here, please let me know. I read every single comment. But other than that, guys, let's wrap it up, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much, and peace out.